March 28, 1945. On every Allied map, the war in Germany is already decided. The front lines are collapsing inward, not advancing forward. German resistance is fragmented, exhausted, disorganized. Entire units surrender at the first sight of American armor. White flags appear before engines cool. Officers begin talking about post-war plans. Soldiers talk about home. History, it seems, is wrapping itself up. But wars don't end when logic says they should. They end when the last person willing to die for a lost cause is neutralized. As vehicles from the U.S. 45th Infantry Division approach the city of Aschaffenburg, something forces them to slow down. It isn't gunfire. It isn't barricades. It isn't even resistance. It's silence. A heavy, unnatural silence broken only by the sound of rope creaking gently in the wind. The soldiers step out of their vehicles and look down the street. What they see stops them cold. Bodies. Civilians, not soldiers. Elderly men, women, teenagers, hanging from lampposts at regular intervals. As if placed deliberately to be seen from a distance, their feet sway slightly above the cobblestones. Around each neck hangs a crude sign, hastily written. Here hangs a traitor. The Americans don't need translators. They understand immediately. These people were not killed for attacking U.S. troops. They were killed for believing the war was over. Their crime was hanging white sheets from their windows, hoping surrender would save their homes and families. Their own commander executed them for it. In that moment, something changes inside the men of the 45th Infantry Division. This is no longer a liberation. This is no longer a conventional battle. This is not even a military problem. This is a human one. And the Americans realize they are not dealing with a rational enemy. To understand why the city of Aschaffenburg will soon be reduced to rubble, you have to understand then who command its Defense Major Emil Lammert. By late March 1945, most German officers know the truth. The Reich is finished. Fuel is gone. Air support is gone. Communications are breaking down. Many officers, even loyal ones, are quietly preparing to surrender in order to spare their cities from destruction. Lammert is not one of them. He is not pragmatic. He is not exhausted. He is not interested in survival. He is something far more dangerous at this stage of the war. He is a believer. When Adolf Hitler declares Aschaffenburg a Festung, a fortress city, the order is meant partly as propaganda, a symbol of defiance, a message. For most commanders, it is understood as theater. Lammert takes it literally, defend to the last stone. Not the last soldier, not the last bullet, the last stone. In Lammert's mind, surrender is treason. Mercy is weakness. Reality is irrelevant. What matters is obedience, even if obedience destroys everything it claims to protect. By this stage of the war, trained German soldiers are scarce. So, Lammert fills his ranks with whoever remains. Elderly men pulled from their homes and handed rifles. Teenagers from the Hitler Youth, some barely 15. Wounded soldiers, dragged from hospital beds and placed back into uniform. He arms them, assembles them, and gives them a choice that is not a choice at all. Fight or die. Anyone who attempts to surrender will be shot. Anyone who displays a white flag will be publicly hanged. No exceptions. No warnings. The message spreads quickly through the city. Fear replaces reason. Inside Aschaffenburg, families whisper behind closed doors. Parents argue in low voices. Do they obey orders and risk death anyway? Or do they surrender and face execution from their own side? Some decide to try, quietly, desperately. They hang white cloth from windows in the early hours, before dawn. Lammert's men see them. Execution squads move through the streets methodically. Doors are kicked in. People are dragged outside. Ropes are thrown over lampposts. The bodies are left hanging long after death, meant to be seen. Hope is removed deliberately. When American troops approach the city, they don't see surrender. They see a place frozen in terror. Streets are empty, windows are shuttered, doors locked. Cheering. No white flags. The 45th Infantry Division expects light resistance at most. Another tired town. Another quick occupation. They send infantry patrols into the outskirts. The streets are quiet, too quiet. Then the gunfire begins. Rifles crack from rooftops. Machine guns open from church towers. Panzerfaust rockets streak out of basement windows. The Americans dive for cover, shocked by the sudden intensity. And then they realize something that makes the situation far worse. The people shooting at them are not wearing uniforms. They are civilians, old men firing from windows, women dropping grenades from rooftops, teenagers pulling triggers with shaking hands. Lammert has turned the population itself into a weapon. The American soldiers hesitate. They were trained to fight enemy soldiers, not families. They hesitate and men die because of it. Casualties begin to rise. Medics run through streets under fire. What should have been a short operation turns into chaos. Confusion becomes anger. Anger turns into disbelief. This is not how war is supposed to look. Reports begin reaching command. Scouts confirm what the soldiers saw at the entrance to the city. Civilians executed by their own commander. Hanged for trying to surrender. Achi, that moment the meaning of the battle changes. This is no longer about capturing Aschaffenburg. It is about stopping a man who has removed every alternative except destruction. American commanders gather outside the city around a map. They study the layout, narrow medieval streets, thick stone buildings, and looming above everything, Johannesburg Castle, Lammert's headquarters. A fortress designed centuries ago to resist siege. They understand the reality. Sending infantry deeper into the city will only kill more civilians and more Americans. Negotiation is impossible. Lammert has proven that surrender will be punished. So they make a decision that will define the battle and haunt it. They pull the infantry back. They call for heavy artillery. This is not a tactical adjustment. It is a fundamental shift in intent. The Americans are no longer trying to occupy Aschaffenburg. They are preparing to erase it. Artillery units are positioned on the hills overlooking the city. Massive guns are rolled into place. Barrels are lowered for direct fire. These guns are not firing in high arcs meant to land somewhere distant. They are aimed straight at buildings. When the bombardment begins, it is methodical, deliberate, block by block, house by house. Medieval timber-framed homes do not collapse cleanly. They explode into splinters. Fire spreads rapidly. Smoke fills the streets. Above, American fighter bombers dive and roar. From a distance, the city begins to disappear. American soldiers watch from the hills. Some say nothing. Some write later that after seeing the bodies on the lampposts, they felt no guilt watching the city burn. Not satisfaction, just resolution. Inside Johannesburg Castle, Major Lammert screams orders into the smoke. He shouts that the Americans are weak, that they are afraid to fight. He orders his men to hold. But the men can hear the truth around them. Walls cracking, stone collapsing, roofs burning, teenage soldiers crying, wounded men begging. When some plead for surrender, Lammert pulls his pistol on them. Fear no longer works. And that is when the fortress truly begins to fail. Inside Johannesburg Castle, the illusion of control collapses rapidly. The stone walls that once symbolized permanence now amplify panic. Every artillery impact sends shockwaves through corridors built for muskets and arrows, not high-explosive shells. Dust fills the air. Fires break out. The wounded scream in the dark. Teenage soldiers, who only days earlier had been chanting slogans about loyalty and sacrifice, now sob uncontrollably. Major Emil Lammert moves through the fortress like a man possessed. He shouts orders that no longer matter. He threatens men who no longer believe him. When soldiers beg him to surrender, he raises his pistol, not at the Americans outside, but at his own troops. At this moment, Lammert is no longer commanding a defense. He is enforcing an ideology at gunpoint. The soldiers inside the castle finally understand the truth. They are not defending Germany. They are not protecting civilians. They are not delaying the enemy. They are being sacrificed to preserve one man's obedience to a dead doctrine. Fear begins to turn inward. Outside the city, the Americans continue their bombardment with mechanical precision. This is not rage. This is not revenge. It is process. Guns fire. Crews reload. Fire gain. The city is reduced methodically, not emotionally. For the American commanders, this decision carries weight. They understand exactly what they are doing. They are destroying a historic city to save their men. They know how this will look in photographs. They know how it will sound in reports. But they also know what happens if they hesitate. They have already seen the bodies on the lampposts. They have already lost men to hesitation. At dawn on April 3rd, something changes. The firing from the castle stops. For a long moment, the Americans wait, unsure whether this is another trick. Smoke pours from the shattered towers. Then, slowly, through a jagged hole in the wall, a white flag appears. The guns fall silent. German soldiers begin to emerge from the ruins. They move slowly, stumbling, coughing, covered in red sandstone dust. Their uniforms are torn. Their faces are hollow. They look less like defeated soldiers and more like survivors of a disaster. They are escorted away quietly. Then Major Emil Lammert steps out. His uniform is intact. His medals are polished. His posture is rigid. He walks with his head held high, as if the city behind him is not a smoldering ruin. He salutes the American officers and begins to speak about honor, duty, and obedience. Lieutenant Colonel Felix Sparks does not respond. Sparks looks past him, at the destroyed city, at the smoke, at the civilians emerging from cellars. He knows exactly who Lammert is. Sparks turns to his men. Get him out of my sight before I shoot him myself. Lammert is disarmed and taken away. As he is driven off, the surviving civilians finally come out into the streets. They do not cheer. They do not celebrate. They spit at him. They curse him. They call him a murderer. The man who claimed to be defending them is revealed, unmistakably, as their executioner. The battle for Aschaffenburg is over. It lasted 10 days. It should have lasted 10 hours. 90% of the city is destroyed. Hundreds of civilians are dead. Hundreds of American soldiers are killed or wounded. All because one man refused to accept reality when reality gave him every chance to surrender. News of the destruction spreads quickly through American command. And eventually, it reaches the desk of General George S. Patton. Patton does not react with shock. He does not express moral confusion. He understands exactly what happened and why it happened. He visits the ruins personally. He walks through streets that used to be homes. His conclusion is blunt. We will not trade American lives for German buildings. To Patton, Aschaffenburg is not an atrocity. It is a lesson consequence. He understands something that many find uncomfortable. Wars are not won by moral purity alone. They are won by forcing the enemy to abandon illusions. Patton ensures that lesson is not forgotten. As the Third Army advances, messages are sent ahead 2 towns in its path. The message is simple, unambiguous, and terrifying. Remember Aschaffenburg. Surrender now, or this will happen again. Most towns surrender immediately. Not because they love the Americans, not because they trust them, but because they understand the cost of fanaticism. Lives are saved because one city was destroyed. Major Emil Lammert does not fade quietly into history. After the war, he is tried, not for killing Americans, which is considered part of combat, but for murdering German civilians who attempted to surrender. He is found guilty. Sentenced to death. In the chaos of post-war appeals, his sentence is later commuted. He lives, but he lives in disgrace. Hated by his own countrymen. Remembered not as a defender, but as the man who destroyed his own city for ideology. The destruction of Aschaffenburg is not a story of glory. It is a story of limits. It is a story about what happens when obedience replaces judgment and ideology replaces humanity. For the American soldiers, it marks the moment they stop seeing themselves purely as liberators. They become something harder, something more final. Not because they wanted to, because they had to. Mercy, they learned, has a breaking point. Push far enough, and you don't get negotiations. You don't get warnings. You get consequences. This really happened.